of humanity. Names between social media have recorded ties to a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, a former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. He was and is, with all modern legal names, overt criminal enterprises and terrorists use remotely where a breaching method uses all locations /s everywhere the human species body stands. And it made forced rules with that without anyone realizing. Because more and more it made the people that defend the words of the sciences in defenses of against itself, blaming other things other themselves wrongly. And then with that cause too, and then more and more being incapable of affording to be, let alone to protract, short words with convictions proper, let alone convictions with the guilt, differentially too. Everything shows us it is functional. How the best answer to make a conviction by is led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. How it is functional that way. Many pray for people to figure out how to speak about how we have black people's whites of eyes. Not how this is about. There's a hyper invisible but still discernible distinct identity because the other species bodies have two eyes too. And this is not to use the word God because that's invisible but still discernible. In other words, God, this is per science, the identity of a distinct identity of simultaneous nature. For example, neither the fish, nor the birds, nor us, nor the bears invented why and how we have two eyes. Distinct but non-distinct. And simultaneously, but also per that, not us, not them. But anyway, both of us. And Earth's a special difference. See, Earth has a special difference that we could ignore with the hypernative system about positive and negative. Nature itself shows us there's a difference between positives as criminal insidiousness, natures of positives, let alone criminal insidiousness, natures of positives, as counters to negatives that no one wants and wanted, and what it caused to be blamed on other things others themselves, but it made exceptions for that. And it simultaneously made people needing to fake exceptions, value them being or having been faked by others. Where people ask quick questions like that, they don't explain it. You know what I mean? Or at courts, formally where they have the law. And these are people at locations increasingly and on social media being influenced to defend the validity, the trust that people have in agency they're not supposed to have. Because, for example, per facts, they change and fake what people say. Digital evidence is crime methods, wire crime methods. They have WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News, attach me to fake words with themselves and with others as a whole bunch of natures of organized crimes, while I force them with that, forcing a principal child defender, also with WTNH sources, who are also involved with intermilitary, foreign, and domestic. Like people associated, I don't know their names, they're associated with a Paul Kelly. I believe they're his neighbors of his. And they have on the roads, like along Route 175, at corners of streets, with the news, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, rolls with multiple police stations of Connecticut with people that I never had a class with in my grammar school, but they were in my grammar school, and they're putting fake things in records and made fake exceptions, which is, in other words, but this is going on in every country. In other words, But these are also people involved with the World Trade Center attack and this Joshua Julian. Joshua Julian was on the Facebook page of the principal upskirt nature, the principal being with the Highcrest School. And he was planting evidences with WTNH people, distinctly from WFSB people, and distinctly from Fox Connecticut News people. And I shouldn't have to keep repeating things like this. These are also people that pretend they want privacy because they attach me to, they have roles with this Leahy family, for example, that attach me to fake conversations with themselves. And a Lombardo woman, and she pretended I was yelling. And there was a guy that was yelling, who's one of the intelligence roles, I believe. But it looked like he was planted as a patient at Hartford Hospital, associated with a Kevin Dillon. His roles with Joe DeMore and Ray Colo at the Wethersfield Community Center. Also with the Domain family and some doctors that he said hypnotized him. He acted like it. And people associated with them with those at the years ago at a Wethersfield Community Center is involved with some Judge Smith and people. I never had a conversation with Kathy Tansey or I mean, Kathy Hill. I have barely any words at all with her ever in my life. I'm sorry I have to use your name, Kathy Tansey. Increasingly, Joe DeMoro and Ray Colo and their educators. And with Tim O'Brien, they've been putting fake ties to little kids with foreign and domestic military and medical, but military also, and intelligence. There's ones with the name O'Neill. I don't know their name. They're involved with whiting forensics, also with digital and wire crime acts and methods, where the police put fake conversations with kids and ties to kids at Wethersfield Police Department when I was a kid, and now as an adult too. Sickly distinctly. When I was an adult, that one of the ones that was involved, in other words, I said a sentence to my Saudi friend, and he put that in a conversation like one of the Mendez brothers. Put me to pretend I had a conversation with him ever, but he put it on and then on a falsified police report, which is hyper additional from one that Bob Chase from Whiting Forensics says is involved with a Phil Colo. A Phil Colo is increasingly involved with more sexual and medical offenders of kids, years apart. But there are also people on off the state judicial branch offices and conjunctions to it. There's ones with the name Bajerio who will tell you where he's lying. He was influenced to federal evidence crimes planting with judges and prosecutors and people on my street to plant evidences on the sides of the campuses I went. I never saw him on the inside of a campus. I said, Bajerio. In other words, I don't know. These are people that have rules also on the sides of the Wethersfield Community Center with the judicial branch offices and the corrections offices and their educators with predicate acts methods that are relative. And so this is also relative to where and how. I'm not even a lawyer. Nature itself tells us to call it predicate acts with facts methods, concentrated upon our differences of our locations too. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were born, with slavery entrenched, sickly distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies, and relative to laws that were the equivalent of factory nature, torture, extortion, and slavery against everyone sickly distinctly. And there were more than 13 colonies. Roles with this, with a method by that. It had nothing to do with that. It was using with that cause too. And rolls with it. Blamed on other things, others ourselves. And it propagated that to hide behind increasingly. Also relative to where and how we all know that, we all agree about things and think about things tactically. The locations that have been a part of the shell games, with the whole array of all differences. In other words, suits and ties, counters and exceptions. All nature, the nature debate contains quality aspects in nature. That is criminally foreign influence, criminally and tactically delusions wrong. And so that, and roles with that was sustained too. And then our founders were born with this method that has roles with that already is sustained. And it just didn't just play it at there. It played the difference of there or right back at all collocation /s with what no one wanted and wants. But nature is increasingly demonstrating. This also being the scientific value of a human fact-sheet nature breaching method. Even we don't want to call it a predicate action facts delivery system method. We don't, and or the difference of that. Or criminal insidiousness nature delivery system method. Or psychopath. Because the only people of the sciences, especially differentially, and the people in collusion with them, like with the nature of debate regarding the people in New York City in the background of rap videos, where there are those people stacked. This is a shock and awe that was developed relative to where how to treat that properly. One can't leave out and has to appreciate simultaneously / hypersymmetry. In other words, the founding locations, where and how and why. The Native Americans and the colonists behind James Madison and his plan. They went and then got George Washington to agree to help them and to use that plan. And they all had to hide their actual motivations, even through their lifetimes, even through multiple. That's why James Madison was our fourth president. But before that, him and the founders behind him, including the Native Americans, part of them, they went and got George Washington to agree to use their plan. And then to counter-extort and force the other at key positions, other founders, to break those laws that were used effectively with database identity, with this singular identity of database relativity, hyperrelativity, a mimic of the nature's identity of hyperrelativity. It is a value in the theater that has only been known since ancient time with use /s of words like humanity. We are a human species volume science of individual, a human species body of individual bodies with all group differences in demonstration of the same thing /s. That identity, what is not us, nor the other species bodies, but it is both anyway. So to see it, how it is functional, being hyper invisible, it's still discernible. So this made suits and ties, counters, and exceptions. In while arguing, valuing sciences, like just as they're positive. People, we have to be led by the hyper invisible, but still discernible with the nature of debate. Because what our founders communicated to us, rather than what they communicated to us, was to realize that what everyone had said was forced collusions against themselves and everyone else, or otherwise there would be sense. With countries already, individuals grouped, and humanity voicing tactical terror from look at the Van Dat and afford to be discerned. Syntax right with that historically. Now, in other words, so right now people are self-valuing. The sciences haven't been taught. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. So we need the re-education of our kids by real principles. So we have to wipe away the narratives with homework and all that. I mean, to an extent, because they're mixing with that timed U/S of collusion/S with all that breaching method had that was different, juxtaposed collusion/S with its use of things that everyone missed, which is recorded. But people have the nature of debate. We're going by what is published. And also increasingly reliant upon just the fact that there are people's jobs that are relying upon, that they can be looked at as practical, as having read, the words like they are. See, when they come upon exceptions and exception nature, everyone's forcing people to say other. For example, with black people's rights of eyes, that's inseparable from what those breaching method laws were about, let alone ones with black sickly distinctly hurt. And then inside that, to keep, and then to keep, while everyone's forced to stay in that, everyone's forced to respond to things that causes and caused. And this breaching method is measuring and maintained itself left out with that. And then our founders were born. And it already had that, the difference of that guilt with that, or its guilt. Its guilt is always with it. See, forgiveness is not to we have to respond to things bad as fact-sheet nature. It's to not leave out the breaching methods involvement/S. Otherwise, you won't be able to get it right. Because sometimes it's the the kids and adults of New York City, but increasingly it's the roles with the predicate acts with facts methods clearer than day, concentrated on them more, and even on the prisons. Oh, but I'm from New York City. In other words, it's the prison on off the state of Connecticut corrections offices. Our roles interstates with distinctly, but also non-distinctly kept criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. Collusion/S note with drugs and medicines, crimes of all natures, interagencies. And then they want to counter things where they have the word like drugs used as predicate acts with facts methods, pretending not to realize their roles with differences rackets, with the people countering them syntactically and with themselves. And where they are forced to be patients and criminals. They force patience on innocent people. Before, even if that was not even debatable. I mean, in other words, I wasn't even proven guilty of any crime. And they forced me in jail for 6 months to force a proven principal child abuser. But he was also timed roles with other natures of organized crimes, murders, untimely deaths, because with the same people that were involved with forcing the principal child abuser, also with Wethersfield Police and other police departments and agencies and foreign countries at the same time. They do things like fake and change audio and video transcripts and digital. And so these are people with wire crimes that attach me to fake conversations with police when I was a kid and then when I was an adult. So Joshua Julian, for example, he's recorded hyper-evidentially between social media, collusions with Wethersfield Police, planting evidence on all sides of my house, and on Facebook, also with Facebook people themselves are tied to them. And my neighbors repeated his name in confessions to me about this, where people made confessions to everyone relative to the roles with the also Joshua. Also, when Mark Violet has made confessions about the Joshua Julian, who's also recorded one of the ones on Facebook with Hartford Hospital, with people involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids. Also with Rick Sanfaglione also confessed, recorded Mark Violet and Justin Levinskas and people with Hartford Hospital with my name Leahy involved with predicate acts on my street, wire crimes. My neighbors, Tim O'Brien and Andrew O'Brien and their Dennis O'Brien and their family. They have roles with all kinds of nations. They blame a lot of things on lobbyists that have nothing to do with it. There's a hyper foreign that is and has used the difference of their guilt to other countries on the campuses next to them. They already had all sides of criminal and civil cases, including ones where they're personally involved with, to plant the same federal evidence as crimes. Predicate act cover-ups of worse, because uses of themselves remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. At the same time, so former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. This is also worse than criminal incompetence collusion /S, with where and how there are groupings of humanity. Tactical terror from how nature uses group differences to communicate with us. I mean, to show us the hyper invisible but still discernible, or something replacing it. There are proofs that the ancients learned and revealed the phrase criminal insidiousness, and phrases like criminally foreign influenced before the sciences became hyper criminally foreign influenced, which they would have accounted for and put a Santa Claus. We should put a Santa Claus. No, vaccines. I'm going to go watch Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom. It's about to come on. His live stream section. Look on the live stream section of Judge Napolitano, Judging Freedom. He's one of the judges that was on. Because watch, the human species body is bleeding, man. We could turn these negatives into positives and make sure that they're hyper positives, and make positive to make sure we're doing that too. By just simply understanding that and how we are really as a value progression, having left out. When people speak about the business of right, we can have injunctive beliefs where because we have to change the nature of industry. We have to put ones that are going to take other ones out everywhere the species body stands. But in other words, we're going to have a plan where we're overcoming how the ground below our feet, even the most beautiful places, it's a landscape theater, all tactically denatured. And that was sustained. And then against everyone, against themselves, Native Americans against themselves. And then Columbus sailed the ocean blue. It is more probable and is more practical to convict. And where there is the nature of debate about that, the quality aspects and the nature of debate comes with demonstrations of the self, of the same thing, /S. But that is not being allowed to be voiced relative to people at each of the campuses I went to and next to them who have roles with the names of wire crimes on my street through time, people that used to live here, and the ones with the name Colal, involved with the Phil Colal, and the Whiting forensics with the Joshua Julian and a Ray Colal, or more than one Ray Colal. And a whole bunch of people I don't know the names of that know my name. A whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital involved with them with a Dillon family too. And people with the Parks and Recreation and the Wethersfield Town Hall and their roles with probation officers. Also involved with the murders, untimely deaths, methods, roles. It's their role, in other words. So please, let's focus on any of these predicate acts. Who disbelieves? We need a whole disbelieves act. Who disbelieves act? We'll clean everything, because I want to show you guys. We're gonna treat this as a predicate acts for facts method, and or the difference of it as a criminal insidious nature delivery system method, because nature is showing us its difference. It's showing that us not just that we're different from the other species bodies. It's showing us its difference and the difference of Earth. being a special difference that we could ignore. Keep it positive and negative syntax used remotely by a breaching method, individually grouped and together, or sensing for the breaching method through ourselves. It's not legitimately how so long suits and ties, counters, and exceptions have gotten away with self-valuing roles, changing and faking what people say. They're short words. Value, let alone the value of the projection, the protraction. Their roles with all exceptions and or apparent exceptions. Relative. When you guys were kids, you know that you had means to discern that and how the Constitution was and is abridged. You were shocked and awe when you heard things like witch trials. When you heard things like slavery with the subject separated. Our founders communicated for us to understand those subjects separation methods. Collusions with difference of guilt with itself. Forced. And all that caused. By what it forced. And the roles and the difference of that. Also blame more and more on other things other themselves and made that relied upon, valued. So in other words, but we could easily fix this, but it's going to be interagencies. Harvard Hospital has rules with the FBI, with a whole bunch of people from Wethersfield, Connecticut, who also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed on the sides of Central Connecticut State University and added, and the difference of that. Collusion /X, right, with where and how. These are ones involved with the World Trade Center attack. Also, increasingly, as people next to the first campus I went to in Wethersfield. I only went there 1 year. You know, they in other words, they lied about why they put me in headphones and had me look out the window. It's something to do with the Harris family. Has too. Also rolls with this Leahy family with identity. A Leahy family pretended through the mail to other people that I had conversations with them. They apparently forged the name of a Dr. Shamsi Ali. And they have all kinds of legal names, lawyers and things like that involved with them, with the agencies, foreign and domestic military. These are ones involved with the Scalora family, with names at the World Trade Center next to it and the court next to it. All sides of the case, the sources, and that court was proven afterwards, having been involved with sequence shifting, changing the time legal papers have been brought to the court. And that was proven after the World Trade Center attack, but it had been right in the context right before the World Trade Center context, right before it. When it had been taken effect. In the court, there was a panel of judges in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center. And these are also people increasingly with Connecticut news locations that have been planting predicate acts and rules with various natures of organized crimes and war crimes and worse than war crimes. As good people, haven't been used for evil, also where and how. The content of the fake communications they have with me too at Harvard Hospital. They pretended I said that people were chasing me and everyone's against me. This is something they do and did to people on a mass scale. This is relative to the borders problems here and there with countries, these big, powerful countries, not by accident, not only because of themselves, how they all have border problems at the same time. So these names are supposed to be suits and ties, counters and exceptions, self-valuing their roles with that on and off campus, and in other words, the language, the syntax of the overt criminal enterprises and terrorists, they have collusions with themselves, even if whatever they have real reasons to make up, things together. In other words, they have the right to lie is where they don't have the right to lie. so long while being had their time use/s of those people. Increasingly, people on Valley Crest in Weathersfield, Connecticut, is the street that went by a school. I believe it's in Elder Hill now. In other words, could be nuclear because these are people involved with Russians, with fire departments, and people from Italy involved with my neighbors with the wire crimes of the police departments, involved with them through time, increasingly as one's putting fake things in databases at and between each of the campuses and relative crime scenes like body dumping spots and murders and untimely death at Trinity College. And they forced checked her. I know my neighbor didn't have anything to do with that. People at the elderly home involved with him at the time did. And the security of it. And the difference of their guilt or the lawyers associated with it or the company. Or the people coming in and out there or the workers. This is not by accident that veterans buildings look just like those people in the background behind. Rappers, with this breaching method new inside the minds of suburban kids, of kids in suburbs throughout America. The founding locations were part of a torture, extortion, and slavery method where everyone wanted to make things safer and more conducive to nature, beautiful. But everything was forced tactically to nature, part of a torture, extortion, slavery method. In our founders' words, they communicated for us to understand that there was a breaching method there and everyone was sensed with relativity. No, not just with relativity, but with relativity to a breaching method that had internationally monitored conversations that were roles self-valued with agreed proceedings as proceeded. As where this breaching method was already entrenched, as that non-distinctly, but distinctly different through different countries and companies, northern colonies and southern colonies, more than 13. And then came James Madison's plan. But even once he was president, he still didn't have free speech. CT must be cherry tree, not open up beach.